You're listening to RVA Real Estate Talk with Chris Elliott and Jared Davis, your source for an honest, insightful look into Central Virginia's real estate market. And now, your hosts, Chris Elliott and Jared Davis.
Hi, I'm Jared Davis.
No, how are you? I'm Jared Davis.
Okay. I play one on TV. Dude, what's up, buddy?
Not much, man. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you been?
I've been good. I haven't seen you around lately. In the
I know.
office.
I haven't seen you since episode 3, I feel like.
It has been. You're in the office. I'm not, I think, for the most part.
I'm still working in December, man.
You are. You're killing it. Every day I see your nightly news rants about your new listings coming up online. So people are talking about it. That's good.
Yeah. Good. All press is good press?
I think so, for the most part.
That's what they tell me.
I guess.
I don't know why they tell me that a lot. They seem to emphasize that.
I'm not sure. How was your weekend?
It was good, man. We stayed at home. It was kind of rainy and disgusting here in the greater Richmond area. How about yours?
Same. It's been like that the last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, between Snowmageddon and whatever we had this past week.
Constant rain. And we got more coming. Thursday's supposed to rain. I think this weekend it's going to rain. So
I heard a stat that it was like the third wettest whatever year in recorded history in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, we've never got a snow like we did last week either in December.
Except for last year.
Highest grossing snowfall in December in like 100 years, something like that. Something crazy.
Man, sounds like you looked this up.
I did.
For this.
I did.
So.
And if not, as long as no one else looks it up, we're fine.
As long as they don't fact check us.
That's right.
We've got the best stats in the marketplace. All right, dude. Well, hey, let's jump into it. I guess we can do as we do always and go into some market stats.
Market stats? We're going to talk about the city of Richmond this week, aren't we?
No, we're going to talk about the greater Richmond area because I didn't do my homework for this podcast.
All right. All righty. So for market stats, what are we going over today?
Sure, man. So the November 2018 numbers just came out. We're always looking a month behind. So a couple of things that caught my eye. Closed listings are actually down 13% this past November from November of 2017. So that was kind of interesting. The number of homes that are actually closed out. Closed pending and new listings are down from October to November. That's to be expected. We always see the market kind of taper down a little bit this time of year. Days on market went up from 31 days on market on average in October to 37 days on market in November. So according to the numbers, we see the market just softening up just a little bit like we see every year. And then we'll probably ramp back up in January, February. Jared, what are you seeing in the streets?
In the streets. That's about right. You know, I think through spring and summer, I think we've talked about this before, almost everything was flying off the shelves. Now we're having to tell our sellers, don't worry if it doesn't sell within the week. It is normal to kind of sit on market a little longer now.
Yep.
And I have seen that. It seemed like for about a month there, actually from that October to November, there was a little bit of a slow. But I've actually seen most of my listings pop off. So I think the averages are kind of true. After they've sat for a month, maybe going on 45 days, I'm starting to watch them click off. I've seen, I think, 2 or 3 pop off in the last week or two. And I think we put about 3 or 4 under contract on the buy side, most all around the city. It seems like the city of Richmond is still pretty hot. We've got one in Chimborazo, one in Oregon Hill, one in Northside, another one coming up in Northside. So it seems like stuff is popping off even though the holidays are coming. What about you?
Yeah, I'm seeing more. It's been interesting. I'm seeing more and more showings on my listings probably the last 2-3 weeks. Not seeing as many contracts on our end, but we're seeing activity go up, which is kind of is always a good thing. I'm wondering if people are just kind of holding off, waiting to pull the trigger just with the holidays coming up. But we're definitely seeing an uptick in activity, which is always the start. So yeah, it's been good, man.
What about your listings themselves? It seems like every day you're posting up something new. So people are still listing with you, it looks like, despite the weather.
Despite the weather. I mean, I tell people, I'm probably not going to be listing much between now and the end of the year just because listing going into, Christmas is probably not the best time to premiere a listing. But we're still posting listings. Most of the conversations I'm having with folks this time of year is, hey, I totally get it. If you want to wait until the first of the year, let's go ahead and let's have the conversation now. And that way we can either put together a game plan or we can kind of get the ball rolling so that we can hit the market running in January. Because as you know, I mean, it really starts second, third week of January, my experience.
And our podcast coming up as we get closer, we'll obviously probably talk about those statistics. But I mean, really, when you look at it, things start ramping up sales for March. And if that happened, it means they went under contract mid-January into February. So you're right. They really do start cramping up even in the winter.
Yeah. Cranking up, not cramping up.
Cranking up.
You don't want to be cramping up. Have you been tanning?
No, and if you're watching us on the video, you're going to see that Studio 77 needs to do some good editing to make it look like we've been sometime in the sun in the last 6 months or so.
Make these pasty white boys.
There's more spotlights in here than like a Hollywood movie release. We got to get something going on.
Studio 77 for all your podcasting and video needs.
I'm going to spray tan for sure before next week, I think.
Mike can do some magic with
I
with
really
Photoshop.
Hope so. I really hope so.
All right, man. So let's jump into, I don't know if there's a new segment, but we're going to do a restaurant highlight.
We're going to be doing a restaurant highlight, which highlights not only an area of restaurant people love to eat. What we find is that when people are moving to the area, it seems like they're not necessarily sure what's going on in the neighborhood. So we kind of tapered into what the neighborhood's like and what there is to eat. So again, this is this week's restaurant highlight.
Restaurant highlights.
All right.
So what are we talking about this week, buddy?
Ooh, Secret Sandwich Society. We did ZZQ last week.
Not so secret anymore.
Hopefully some people have actually listened to this and gone out and tried it because it's phenomenal.
You just had that for lunch. You're probably going to burp that up at some point during this podcast.
I live on ZZQ. But anyways, Secret Sandwich Society this week. Have you been?
Yeah, so I went for my wife's birthday. We went for lunch, and I was really impressed because I thought it was going to be a little hole-in-the-wall kind of sandwich joint, which is okay. But it's kind of fancy. They got a nice bar. There's nice gold accents. Parking is terrible, as most places in the city are.
Yeah.
But once you can actually get out of your car and get in there, it's pretty legit.
So where is it?
It's downtown in the city.
Where?
The financial district, isn't it?
You have no idea where it is.
No, I plugged it in the GPS. The GPS got me there.
Ubers everywhere.
It's,
so
it's 2018.
Right on Grace Street. I believe it's right between 3rd or 4th Street and Grace. But what did you get? Anything like take home that you want to tell the listeners about?
So what did we get? We got, I think we splitsied like the Washington, and then there was some ham and cheese, and then there was some turkey.
Okay.
Something.
So you have no idea what you ate, really?
No, it went down so fast.
So being the single man that I am, I don't do much cooking at home, and so I eat out a lot. So I think I've eaten most of their menu at this point. But the highlight for me, they have a sandwich if you go there, and it's got pulled pork on it, and it's got honey butter and pickles and jalapenos, I believe, and pimento cheese, and it is incredible. And on top of that,
lunch of champions.
You have to get their pimento cheese fries. Nothing about this meal sounds healthy. It's not.
Yeah.
But their pimento cheese fries are, oof.
And then the next morning, you do have to go to at least 2 or 3 spin classes just to work all that off.
Your arteries are done for at least a day or two after it, but it's worth it. So for sure, Secret Sandwich Society, and it's right downtown Grace. Lots of good restaurants in the area. Lots of condos for sale down there if you're wanting real estate wise. What do you buy down there? Not as much single family houses within a couple block radius, but a lot of little cool multifamily buildings. You've got 6 North 6. It's a cool building that's pretty close by. You've got the Miller and Rhodes building. Cool condos that actually link up to the Hilton Hotel down there, so you actually get access to their amenities there if you move into the building. You've got vistas on the James. You've got Riverside. A handful of things that are within walking distance or at least a short Uber away. So pretty cool area.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a restaurateur throughout the greater Richmond area, we would maybe love to get you on the show.
Yeah.
So if you've got a restaurant that you or a bar that you would like to highlight and can throw us a free sandwich at some point,
we'll come try
that is
you
a
out.
requirement. We'll come try you out, and we would love to get you on the show.
That would be awesome. Exactly.
Cool. So now to the deep dive. All right, so into the deep dive today. So today's topic, we are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart. I've got some clients going through it right now. But talking about how do you transition from, how do you sell a home and buy a home all at the same time? Seems simple enough, but there's definitely a lot of factors at play. There's a lot of balls in the air. And it could be a little stressful, especially if it's done wrong, but even when it's done right. So Jared, do you want to go through with us, or I can, kind of the 3 ways in which you can do that, and then we'll talk about pros and cons and kind of break each one down.
Yeah, so essentially when someone comes into this scenario, you've got a handful of things you can do. You can either purchase the house while you still own the other house, which means you qualify to finance for both. You can buy the house, you can take your time moving over, but you're carrying 2 houses for a while, and then you put that one up for sale. The next option would be to obviously get your house completely sold or get it under contract and then be able to put in a contract on another house. And then the last would be house isn't under contract yet, but we can do what's called a contingency or first right of refusal sale and hope that we can get your house sold before the other house sells. And we'll go into details on all of these.
Absolutely. So let's break it down maybe. Let's go in the first one. It's buying a house and closing on it before your home is sold or without the contingency of your home being sold. So what that means is that you live in a home right now, you own a home, let's call it 123 Easy Street, and you want to move to 456 Bigger Badder Street or whatever. The thing, I guess the first thing is, hey, am I financially able and am I financially willing to purchase a home before mine is sold? So you've got to either have the cash or you've got to qualify for the mortgage to be able to do so, to be able to carry two mortgages at the same time. And then the other thing that you have to ask yourself is, am I financially comfortable with that reality? And hey, let's say I'm not able to get my home sold immediately. How long can I carry two homes without it breaking me or without it freaking me out? So let's maybe talk about some of the pros, Jared, and then I'll be Mr. Evil and I'll talk about some of the cons.
Sure. So pros are that you're not necessarily in a time crunch. So if you can go out and you can find whatever house you want to at the time, and not have to worry about selling yours, then it really gives you the time to find whatever you want to find with however long it takes you. So if inventory is low, you can really wait to find that perfect house to throw a contract in. Another pro would be that you can take your time moving out. So since you don't have contingencies, you're not trying to close on houses back to back to back. It's a lot less stressful if you can get one closed and then take a transition into the next. Also lets you take your time to move things over. So really, as long as you're okay with floating two payments for a while, you can take as much time as you need to kind of move stuff out of one house into the other. It means you don't have to move right out of this other house into the new one. So you can really take all your time, get what you want out, get the house ready to sell, ready for market. The other perk is that once that house does go up for market, you're not living in it. So you're not having to keep it show ready. It should stay show ready. You're not having to get out or get the kids out or get the pets out. So it's probably the most ideal scenario if you can afford to do it this way. But it's probably the least likely scenario that we see most of the time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so I'll kind of be Mr. Evil here and talk about the cons. So
here's why. This is why it's the least used method.
So first and foremost, like we talked about, you've got to be able to financially afford two houses. The reality, I don't know about you, but most of the clientele that I'm talking with, they simply just can't afford to carry two mortgages at the same time. So maybe the first thing, if you're starting this process, call either myself or Jared. You can call me first. If I don't pick up, you can call Jared. But we want to get folks up with a mortgage lender just to have that conversation of, hey, can I swing this? And then even if you're able to do it, it's, hey, are you financially comfortable carrying two payments? So you figure, if you, let's just for simple math, let's say you were to close on your new house on the 1st of January. Then maybe it takes you 2 weeks to get your property, get moved out comfortably. It takes you another 2 weeks to get the property on the market. So let's say we get your house on the market by February 1. Average days on market is about 30 days. So it's March 1 before we've gotten your property under contract. It takes another 30 days to close. So now we're talking about April 1st. So you've pretty much got two houses that you own for 4 months. So just your mortgage payment times 4. Yeah. And hey, are you comfortable with that along with your new mortgage payment on your new house? Now, when you close on the new one, there's going to be a little leeway with when your first mortgage payment is due and all that. But that's the question there too.
Well, and also think about the fact that they still got their utilities, they've got their taxes,
Yep.
You've got all of your carrying costs, and a lot of times people want the cash from the one close because moving into another house, typically there's more furniture that needs to be purchased. There's painting that needs to be done. Maybe there's fixing something up. Maybe it's cleaning. Maybe it's landscaping. Whatever it may be. Maybe they're going to do something with the kitchen or bathroom before they get situated. So a lot of times people need their cash. So again, do you have that excess cash for moving, getting blinds, getting curtains, getting furniture, plus carrying the carrying costs of two houses?
And the other thing is too, that folks should think about is, hey, if you're going to be closing on your house and then you're going to be listing your house for sale afterwards, think about what time of year are you going to be having your home that you're selling hit the market? A lot of people don't think this through, and hey, we're going to close on our new construction house come September. Well, October, November, December may or may not be, depending on the home, depending on the area, depending on the price point, may or may not be the best time of year to hit the market. So that's something you've also got to think about too, is the timing of when you're going to be hitting the market with the home that you're selling.
Exactly. So, and really this whole podcast for people that are listening that have a house, it's really to just try to prepare you, because we get so many
Just start
calls,
the conversation.
So many calls from people that have a house and they say, hey, we're looking at houses we want to buy. And you start going through, all right, well, we can start setting up some showings, getting you pre-approved. Do you have something to sell? And most people that do and say yes, they just don't really get how this process works. So that's the first way. Again, if you can afford it, it's probably the best way. It's probably the least stressful way, as long as the cash flow is there.
Yeah.
Now, probably the least, and not probably, most definitely, the worst way to do this would be the contingency first right of refusal method. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I don't know if I would use the word worst. It's just the market that we've been in the last couple of years, and the market that we're probably going to be in for at least another year or two. It's just very hard to pull this off because the market is super hot, which helps you when you go to sell, but it does cut both ways and hurt you when you purchase. So if I can step out of Mr. Evil for a second, I'm going to talk about the pros of this, and then I'll let you talk about the cons. So the pros of the situation. Let's explain what this is. You have a house to sell, and you go to the seller of the property that you're trying to buy, and you say, "Hey, Mr. Seller, we love your house. We want to buy your house, but hey, we've got to sell our property. So what we want to do is we want to write you a contingent offer that says we get to buy your house, but only if we get to sell our house, or you're only tied into us after we've gotten our property under contract." Okay. The pros of this situation is that you've got the security of knowing that you're not going to be owning two properties. You get to go out and identify, if it works, a property that you would like to purchase before you have to go through all the things that folks have to do to get their home ready for market and to get their property sold. And it kind of ties up another property before you have to really get in gear for yours. So that's a pro. Jared, maybe talk about some of the cons or why this is not working just in the market that we're in right now.
Yes. So as far as cons go, I think the easiest way to liken this is to give the example of saying, I would love to buy this, but I'm really not able to right this second
just
unless
yet.
This happens.
Right.
And unfortunately, because we're in a market where houses are still selling so quickly, especially if you're in a hot area, right now, some sellers, agents, they don't even want to take a first right of refusal offer.
But tell me why. So I'm a buyer. I make you a contingent offer. You're representing a seller. What is the conversation that you're having with your client? And allow people to understand it's not because they're bad people or whatever. What is the conversation you're having with your seller client when a contingent offer comes in?
Well, here's the thing. For the seller, the perk is that they get to keep their house on the market until the potential purchaser gets their house under contract. So you may think, well, I won this offer. I've got this contract now on this house that we want to buy. Now we just have to get ours sold. But then the con side is that this seller can still go out and show this house. They can sell this house to whoever comes in. But there's typically at least a 24 to 48 hour grace period in a first right that says if they get another contract, the buyer has 24 to 48 hours to get their house under contract or purchase without a contingency, essentially, if they could finance both. But in this market, because things are selling so fast, a lot of sellers don't want to tie up the house for 24 to 48 hours or 72 hours, whatever it may be. So they simply say, hey, when you get your house under contract, bring us the contract. We'll take it. We don't need a first right at that point, and we don't have to try to lock it up.
Yeah. And honestly, too, even at that point, you're still a contingent offer. So that seller of that property is still, not only are they linking themselves to you as a buyer, but they're linking themselves to the buyer of your property. So if anything happens to that transaction, your transaction falls apart as well, potentially.
And that will be the case on the third way as well when we talk about it. And
sure.
So it's just an evil that we have to deal with as realtors. Sometimes you have houses in a domino effect where you may have 3 or 4 deals piling. The most I've ever heard was 7 deals that fell apart all at one time because one at the beginning
that was
failed.
awesome.
That's terrible, right? So the main thing
over a $200 inspection item.
Exactly. So the big thing is we don't want to deter anybody from this method necessarily, but it's just having realistic expectations, knowing that you may not get it accepted. You may spend a lot of time looking at houses that may get sold out right from under you. So it really is best to get your house prepped, because if you do have a first right and it fails, you're still in the position of having to sell your house.
Sure.
And it's already listed at that point. So at this point, we move into the third, which is listing your house, getting it up, getting it ready for market, knowing you have to move. But then once you get it under contract, then you can go out and put a contract on whatever it is you want. Go through, let's just say, the pros of this. There's really not that many cons, honestly, on this.
Let's do it together. Well, there's a couple.
Okay.
All right, so the pros of this is, so like we talked about, the reality is most people that own a home have to sell that home and close that transaction out before they can purchase theirs, whether they just can't carry the 2 mortgage payments. A lot of folks are using the equity in their first home towards the down payment in their second home. And the reality is most sellers don't really want to talk to a buyer that has a house to sell that it isn't already under contract. So the third option, what we're doing most with, I know with my clients, and I'm sure with yours, is we're saying, hey, let's go ahead, let's get the property under contract. Let's secure ourselves a contract. And then when we're negotiating that contract, let's negotiate out either a longer closing period, or what I prefer, a 2-week, a 1 month, a 60-day rent back period, which means that you will sell your property, you'll close on it. The buyer then becomes the legal owner of the property, but you get to stay in the property for a certain amount of time after closing and actually rent the property as a tenant. But that gives you some time to go out and find your next home.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are the pros of doing it that way?
So the pros are that you don't have overlapping payments, right? You're not going to have to pay 2 mortgages. When one closes, you run right into the other. So you're actually going to have anywhere from a month to 2 months of a hiatus of no payments. Where you're good to kind of save some of that cash back that you put out.
Or spend it on furniture.
And everything else that comes with buying a house, of course.
Get a new TV.
Exactly. You can start making your house what you want it to be, right? And man cave. So anyways, that's a plus. The other plus is that at the end of the day, you're not worried about losing it. Once you're locked up, as long as you know your house is going to close and things are going smoothly, you've got that house. No one's going to come buy it from under you. And then the last thing would be, as far as equity goes, like you said before, you may need some of that cash to buy that next house. So this is going to let that transaction close. It's going to give you your proceeds from that sale. So whether you need that for your down payment, whether you need that for your closing costs, whether you need it for, like you said, furniture or anything else, you're going to be able to take that cash before you get into the next house.
Yep. Where this can go wrong. So, you chime in if I'm missing anything, but the only scenario or the only 2 scenarios that I can think of is, so whatever you negotiate as far as a rent back period or, long closing or something like that, it is somewhat of you've got a time frame that you need to go identify the next property that you're moving into. So if you run out of time and you can't find something, then you potentially have to go live with friends, have to live with family, have to do a short-term rental situation. That's probably what freaks the most people out. I've yet to find a client that wasn't able to find enough, a house within, 30 days is what we usually try to negotiate for our folks. And then the only other thing, if something goes wrong with your purchase, like I've got a client right now where, without going into too much detail, the seller of the house that they are buying, there was some screwy stuff going on in the background, so we're trying to work that out. Their transaction closes pretty quick, so they've got a limited amount of time they could stay in their original house that they've sold. So we're just hoping we can get all that worked out. So you are somewhat in limbo there for a little bit, but it's just a reality of making a move like this sometimes. It's a risk that we run, but just knowing that going into it, we can do some things to potentially prevent that, and at least that way you know what your risks are.
And as long as you push the closing time out far enough, we can close on most loans within 30 days. So if the shortest time period needed is 30 days, it's just a matter of when you're negotiating that contract, that's negotiated up front with the price. So if you're on the sell side, it's your right to tell that buyer, look, we can come to this agreement on price or closing costs, but we're going to need either 45 or 60 or 90 days for this closing. Can we make this work? And as long as you can come to an agreement, if you do a 75-day close or 60-day close, that gives you a month and a half to find something and put it under contract.
Yeah.
And like you said, almost everybody will be able to find something within a month and a half.
Even
if nothing's on the market right then, stuff is constantly being listed. If you can avoid rent backs, I typically like to avoid a rent back if possible. I guess there's pros and cons on each side. One,
Sure. That's another show.
If the transaction's closing sooner, that's great. It's less that can go wrong, so you get one transaction out of the way. That's good.
Yep.
But anytime you got someone renting back, depending on which side you're on, I should say, I guess.
Yep.
If you're on the buy side, you may not want the seller there for a month or so after in case something goes wrong with the house. But again, like you said, that's another show. But there's so many ways that you can do it. That's the good thing about it. If you're going to do the list and get it under contract route before you go buy something, there's so many different ways. So many people worry, what happens if we don't find a house? What happens if we need to rent back? What happens if we need to get in the house early? We have provisions for all of that.
Sure.
So if we need to get you in the house early, it's a possibility. If we need to keep you in your house for a little longer, it's a possibility. We can change closing dates. So like you said, there's not but so much that can go awry. The home inspections and appraisals are probably the biggest thing.
Yep.
If you've got the one deal that's contingent, again, sometimes at Domino's, you may have 3 or 4 houses that are closing in succession. If one goes awry,
that's an SAT word right there.
Yeah, you like that one? Always trying to expand the vocabulary.
Mike's rolling his eyes over here. Studio 77 for all your podcasting needs.
Chris Elliott's not used to big words like that.
No, definitely not. We keep it nice and simple at my house. Okay.
That's right.
And if there's no red line under it, I've spelled it correctly.
That's right. It's the world of autocorrect.
If you're so smart, you figure out what I was trying to say.
That's right. So yeah, if one house falls through at the beginning, though, it's gonna domino and turn into some issues. But
sure.
Ultimately, again, we can even fix those. Sometimes it's just being patient enough to let somebody get it back under contract. If for some reason it is something that sold very quickly, sometimes they can get it back up and get it back under contract and keep things on timetable. Maybe you get pushed back a couple weeks, but at the end of the day, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, well, and once again, the point of this show, these are conversations that we're having day in, day out with our clients.
Constantly.
And we just want to have these conversations in public, just to give you guys some things to think about, some things to think about maybe that you haven't, maybe answer some nagging fears that you've had. But of course, every client is different, every person is different, every situation is different. So this is just kind of showing you the playbook, and then when you sit down, we can customize a plan that makes best sense for you and your situation. So
exactly.
Yep.
Well, I think that's it. The biggest thing is we'd say this at the end of every show. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, any thoughts, please send them our way. We're probably going to start doing some live podcasting soon, too, answering some questions for people live on air. Also, if you have some questions to send in before the fact, we'll take them into consideration on the show. Again, feedback is welcome. Someone just called me about our show last week on grant programs. They had questions. We were able to get them with the lender, get them with Mark, get them start talking about the VHJ program. So, again, very helpful. We love to hear from you guys. So definitely reach out to us, whether it's at any of the links on Podbean, Apple, iTunes Store, whether it's on our Facebook, wherever you're looking at YouTube. We're kind of all over the place for this show. So wherever you're watching it, you can reach out to us directly. 536-6100 is my number.
804-980-1898 is mine.
And again, this is RVA Real Estate Talk with Jared Davis.
And Chris Elliott.
If you have a real estate question you would like to ask Chris or Jared, reach out to them at chris@chriselliottrealestate.com or jared@centralvarealty.com. Who knows, it may even be featured on an upcoming episode.